locally here if you were a fan of the New England Patriots, but probably the biggest bit of news that we were all waiting to see coming down to Tuesday was the status of Jonathan Taylor and the Indianapolis Colts, their star running back who had been on the PUP list for the majority of training camp and who had been given permission to seek a trade partner during camp. We got the news Tuesday, courtesy of ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter, that the Colts had not felt like they had received an offer with adequate compensation for Jonathan Taylor, and so he will not only remain with the team, but also remain on the PUP list, Dad, which means he's going to miss the first 4 games of this season, and we sort of kicked the can down the road of what does Jonathan Taylor's role look like with this team going forward now?
Well, I mean, from the side of football, he's gone. It's like when you get injured, right? Which is, he's on the PUP list, so it's based off an injury. But he is not there for the first 4 games, so he is basically a ghost to that team. You know who can't worry about them? Anybody on the coaching staff and any of the players on the team. Because no matter what, they're playing 4 games without him. So from that side of it, he's gone. It's put aside. You had all the work leading up to this point. Now there's not, and I'm sure they were aware if the trade didn't go through that he was going to stay on the PUP list. So they've been going without him for a while now. They're going to be going with Zach Moss, Deion Jackson, and a rookie.
Zach Moss, who's still recovering from that broken arm he suffered in training camp, too.
Exactly. So I don't know what the future holds for him. They have until the trade deadline, which I believe is Halloween.
Yeah, October 31st.
So to try and get a deal done. If not, we go through this next year. Do they try and tag him again next year? Does he not want to sign the tag next year? And we have all this fun all over again. But right now, in all honesty, the Colts don't give a damn about him because he can't affect not only the first game, but the first 4 games. So that's all they're concerned about right now.
He can't affect in the game plan, but the lack of Jonathan Taylor out there is absolutely an effect on this team. You just mentioned and looked at all the players they're talking about here. Deion Jackson, Evan Hull, who's a rookie, Zach Moss, who I don't think has ever rushed for more than 500 or 600 yards during his time in the NFL. So you're talking about a decided drop-off in production behind an offensive line that was Jekyll and Hyde the last 2 years, right? 2021 helped block for Jonathan Taylor, who led the NFL in rushing that year. 2022, it was a disaster up front for them, albeit with quarterbacks that were a lot less mobile than the rookie and Anthony Richardson they're about to bring in, who should help on his own some of the ills for this offense. We expect under Shane Steichen, right? You're going to use a ton of RPOs like you did last year in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts. You're going to run the quarterback a bunch, which helps out the offensive line in front of you. Absolutely. But you lose that potent threat of a known commodity at running back in a way that, I don't know, I'll be fascinated to see. And in the current running back conversation, it'll be really relevant. What kind of effect does this have on the Colts offense?
So you do have that, but you know what Shane Steichen has never had? Jonathan Taylor in the backfield of his offense on his new team with the Colts. So he's never dealt with him. He's only dealt with these other running backs. So that's what he's used to. So we see with the production of Taylor, and I know they're going to miss it.
But he's a better running back than all the guys
I completely agree with that. But for Shane Steichen, I'm just looking at issues. Say Jonathan Taylor was there in practice, and boom, right before week 1 he gets hurt. Now you're like, God, this is a guy we've been practicing with the whole time. He's not there.
Sure.
Shane's had the other backs. That's who he's working with outside of Zach Moss, getting freed up from the broken arm. But Shane has never had Jonathan Taylor. While they're better with Jonathan Taylor, he's had plenty of time now leading up to the season to work with others and get this offense integrated with other running backs.
True, yeah, he hasn't had to absorb this as a loss. We talk about this all the time with injury where, you know, in an even more micro version, if you have a guy get injured within the body of a game and you've built your game plan around him all week and you've had him in mind, it's a lot more damning than if a guy gets injured on Tuesday and you know he's going to be out and you can plan for it. So they've been able to plan for this. And this is a shame, Charlotte, because everything that happens now with the running backs feels like it's an indictment of the entire conversation, right? And so right, wrong, or indifferent, people are going to use the results of what happens without Jonathan Taylor in this first 4 games as yet another mark in the ledger either for or against running backs overall.
Totally. I mean, I think that something that I've talked about this before with you guys. It really bums me out, the market, and I think that that's something that a lot of people feel. But I feel like at some point something's going to have to give. Like either the pay is going to have to increase, or it's like we're headed towards some sort of reckoning. And I think that the Jonathan Taylor stuff. Yes, it's one guy. It's one instance. I mean, it was after he had his meeting with Jim Irsay that he was like, I think I want to trade, which, you know, I can sort of understand that. Yeah. But I think that no matter what happens with him, it is a little bit of an indictment because if the Colts didn't get offers that they thought were valuable for Jonathan Taylor, then like where does that leave everyone else? And I think that's hopefully something happens with him where there is a value that they deem great and he's happy with it. But it just feels like things are getting sort of more and more dire in the running back conversation, and it's something that offenses need. So I feel like something's got to give at some point. No?
Well, it does, but that's the million-dollar question: is what's going to give? What can happen to change the valuation and bring the running game and the running back position back to where it was a while ago? I don't know what that is. The only thing that comes to mind is, I've talked about this with you, Mike, defenses are smaller and spread out more for the pass. So if you start running the ball more to try and take advantage of that, does that help bring the running back back? But right now we found out you're not getting a first rounder for a running back, right?
Yep.
That's what the Colts wanted. They didn't get it. So you're not getting that.
Which, to be clear, while they got more picks in this, you wouldn't even get a first rounder for Christian McCaffrey.
No, you
when
would
he
not.
got traded from the Panthers
exactly
to the 49ers.
Right. Exactly
a team
right.
that was in the best position to make use of him. For the guy that's arguably the best running back in the league right now, and probably is, you couldn't even get a true first-round pick there.
So what's going to change it? We kept talking about the quarterback position and fully guaranteed deals, saying what quarterback is going to draw that line in the sand. Was it going to be Lamar Jackson? No, it wasn't going to be Lamar Jackson. Justin Herbert? No. Joe Burrow? I don't think he's going to do that either. So that's going by the wayside. Owners win. Deshaun Watson deal was an outlier, not a precedent setter. So what happens for the running back position now? Who gets that deal? Do we have to wait till Breece Hall, though he's coming off of an injury? He was going to be the offensive rookie of the year. Is it going to be Bashawn Robinson and what he's able to do with the start of his career in Atlanta? At this point, I don't know what's going to turn around the foundation for the running backs and bring that pay up.
You mentioned it. Injury is a huge part of all the conversations we've had about the guys like Saquon Barkley this offseason. Like we're about right now with the quarterback situation with Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis, is he's on the PUP list right now. We weren't sure for a while if that was gamesmanship, if it's still gamesmanship, or if he's truly dealing with that ankle injury. You've also got, and this is the other thing, Charlotte, is everything keeps changing around these guys in the league. You've got not just a control here of, well, what does Jonathan Taylor look like or this offense look like when you remove him? It's the offense is completely changing. Before, it was built around him. That was how the Colts wanted to win, was running the ball on defense and just slotting old quarterbacks in to do the rest. Now they're changing the offense completely to account for what we're seeing more and more around the league. Quarterbacks who can help you spread the entire field, use their legs to also influence what you're going to see, and what that turns the offense into going forward. And that's an effect on the running back without them even being on the field that all of a sudden we've got to account for. So we'll have plenty more time to get into the rest of the situation around Jonathan Taylor, as now, like Dad said, he gets put on ice for 4 weeks, and we get ready to watch them play football. Jesse, there are more names around the NFL that are also going to be looking for jobs in different ways here after cutdown day. Who are some of the notable losses that we've seen on rosters so far?
Yeah, we got some pretty notable ones. Bradley Roby, Saints cutting him, Broncos trading. The kicker market was hot, huh?
Yeah,
we saw a lot of action there. That was pretty crazy.
Little Lutzy reunion with Sean Payton in
Yeah,
Denver.
he kicked for the Saints for 6 seasons, so Sean Payton said, let's bring this guy back. Deion Jones getting cut by the Panthers, but the Pats. Charlotte, my God. I mean,
Jessie?
the quarterback room is desolate. There's like a tumbleweed rolling through right now as we speak.
Everyone knows I'm a Patriots fan here. So I'm looking at the news yesterday, and it's like, oh, okay. So the Patriots cut Bailey Zappi. I'm blanking. What's Cunningham's
Malik Cunningham.
Malik Cunningham. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, love that we're all in on Mac Jones. That's so fun for everybody. And I'm not being sarcastic. I actually think he's great. I'm hopeful. But yeah, people have speculated maybe Mac Jones wants a veteran in the locker room. He loved having Brian Hoyer around. Okay, so maybe they're going to go get some guy who we all know from, the 10 different teams he's played on. But what happens if Mac Jones gets hurt, which happened before, and Bailey Zappi came in and won both of the games he started? He played phenomenally. He looked like Mac Jones. He might have been why wouldn't you want a clone of your starting quarterback just waiting around? I don't know. I think for me, look, I know Belichick is the Dark Lord of football, but I believe that a lot more when he had Tom Brady. And I hope I'm eating my words. I hope that in a month, I'm like, okay, Bill's still got it, but he sort of has a lot to prove this season. Like, making these kinds of moves is like, all right, that's great when we all think you walk on water, but for the past few seasons, you haven't. So you got to prove that this makes sense, because when I used to be confused by things the Patriots did, I'd be like, oh, what? It's Belichick. He's a genius. What?
Yep.
And now I'm like, is he? I don't. And yeah, smarter than I am, but like, I don't know, guys.
That's exactly where we are, though. Is Bill Belichick always got the benefit of the doubt. But then all of a sudden, no offensive coordinator who's running the show on offense and not making the playoffs. So you start to question a little more. You still want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but what is the plan here? Because it would make sense to have a veteran behind him. Malik Cunningham is going to be back, I think, whether it's on the practice squad or that emergency quarterback. I think he's going to be back, but no veteran here to help out.
Charlotte mentioned Brian Hoyer.
Yeah.
37 years old, by the way. Brian Hoyer, lurking out here, continuing to draw paychecks from people in the Belichick coaching tree. Anyone know where Brian Hoyer is right now? Anyone know where Brian Hoyer is right now?
No.
Brian
No
Hoyer
idea,
is
Mike.
the backup quarterback for former Patriot assistant Josh McDaniel in Las Vegas behind Jimmy Garoppolo. And you do wonder if, because Aiden O'Connell played so well this preseason, maybe Bill could pick up the phone and make a little call. But speaking of waving goodbye, Angels, what the hell's going on here? Off and running.
Dude.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. There are no more Angels in the outfield. The Angels placed everyone on waivers yesterday. Guys, this is crazy. Look at this list. They had just acquired a couple of these dudes like a month ago at the trade deadline in hopes of making a postseason run. They went all in with Shohei. They acquired all these guys. Here we go. They're going to make a run. And now they're just having a nightmare-fueled August. I want to say where do they go from here, but it just feels full collapse mode to me.
Well, it makes everybody wonder, should they have, tried to trade Shohei Ohtani when they had the chance before the trade deadline? They decided to go for it. I will never have a problem with a team trying to go for it. Okay,
Yeah.
you got the two of the best players in the league. I know Trout was on the DL, came off, went back on. I get it, but if they're going to go for it, they know eventually these two are going to be broken up. I have zero problem with them going for it. Could it have blown up any more? They had the worst since the trade deadline when they went for this thing. They're 7-18, the worst record in Major League Baseball. They're now 12.5 out of the wild card spot, and now they have a guy in Shohei Ohtani who at least they won't have to pay $600 million, but still, he's damaged goods with a pitching career probably on the clock. Still a great hitter, but this just absolutely blew up in their face. But I'm still, I guess that's a competitiveness, from the players in the sport. I'm glad they were trying to go for it.
And especially going for it with the idea of retaining this generational superstar in mind. The whole idea was, we're going to show Shohei Ohtani we're actually a serious organization. And to quote Logan Roy, life looked back at the Angels and said, you are not serious people. And Charlotte, watching this disintegrate in front of them, and then what this move means, right? The thought is the Angels could save about $7 million, which might get them below the competitive balance tax threshold, which then would get them a compensatory pick in the second round as opposed to the fourth round if Shohei Ohtani walks in free agency this offseason. Charlotte, this kind of feels like waving the white flag on a number of fronts here if you're the Angels.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't quite understand how you have, as you said, a generational talent in Shohei Ohtani who is doing things that we just don't see. I mean, it's like he could probably pitch to himself and hit a home run. Like, if you told me that Shohei did that, I would not be surprised. So the fact that the Angels, also with Mike Trout, two generational talents, the fact that they've had these guys and have managed to just fail so completely so many times, and now they're like, this is the year. We're going to make it to the postseason. We're going to make it far in the postseason. Shohei gets hurt, and it sort of blows my mind. It's one of those things where you want to think that the people in charge know better than you do. You want to think that they're like, no, I might not get it, but like they've got a plan, and I have to trust in that plan. With the Angels, it's like, I don't know that they ever had a plan, and now any plan that they had, it's the white flag. And I can't think of a more perfect quote than the Logan Roy, you are not serious people, because how do you blow that? How do you do it this badly? Like, I think you'd have to try hard.
You know what? And I feel bad for the Angels because they couldn't control the injury portion of this.
Can never do that.
You couldn't. I mean, you maybe could have seen the value proposition. And we talked to Jared Kroppis on the show after the deadline, and he said this was a bad move. They should have gotten what they could for Shohei Ohtani, because if you looked at this team and analyzed them with a clear view, in a vacuum, you would say this is probably not a team destined to make the postseason or accomplish the kinds of things they want to. Dad, I get the point of, man, you got to at least try. You don't want to go down, to use a really ham-fisted baseball metaphor, you don't want to go down in the Shohei Ohtani at bat with the bat on your back, watching the ball go past you in the plate. You want to take a cut at this thing, but there is that worry there, and now you wonder with Shohei, is there a reason for him to play anymore this season based on what the Angels have just signaled here? Do you shut that down, even though he had been hitting? I think in his first series since the tear, went 3-9 against the Mets in that series. Do you continue playing if you're Shohei?
So he's a guy that wants to keep playing. Remember, they wanted to do an image of his elbow before they saw the tear, and he didn't want to get it. That dude just wants to go play. So it would be equivalent in football of taking the player's helmet away and saying, dude, you're done. You know, you're done.
Well,
we're not going to put you out there
I wonder if he reevaluates after this, I'm saying. Like, the team clearly looks at this situation and says, all right, we're thinking about the future here. If you're Shohei, you're already hurt. You're coming up on your free agency offseason. Why would you go out there and risk anything else happening that might potentially hurt your value?
Let's also be honest here. If they didn't make these moves, they're 12.5 back from the last wild card spot. Do we realistically think they had a shot anyway? And he was going out there and he was playing. So even if they didn't waive all these players, they weren't going to make the playoffs, and he was out there playing. I think he just is a guy that wants to play. Now, from the Angels side, was it knee-jerk to say just what you talked about? Save the $7 million this month. Does it get you under the tax cap to where you could get more for Shohei if he leaves? Was it too much of a knee-jerk instead of saying we want to continue to try to sign Shohei, which probably is going to save anybody a couple $100 million if his pitching days are on the clock? Should we have hung on to some of these guys that we waived for our team next year if our plan is to keep Shohei Ohtani instead of knee-jerking and waiving these 6 guys. So I don't know. It's like, did they compound one move with a bad move over the top, Charlotte? That's the one thing I'm wondering.
Well, I just feel like so much of the Angels' DNA and sort of their whole personality is Shohei Ohtani, and like has been. And I would love to hear from, if you're an Angels fan listening out there, tweet at me or Instagram at me or whatever, face smash at me about how like, I want to know how Angels fans feel right now, because for me, as someone from the outside, very, very not ingrained in Angels culture, I'm like, it feels like when Shohei leaves, or if he's hurt and isn't playing and then he leaves, it's sort of like, what do we have here? And I wonder how much Angels fans are tied to the Angels winning with Shohei, or how much they'd be like, cool, get rid of him. This doesn't make sense for the team, because so much of what we've heard about the Angels has really been like, look at this phenom. So I almost feel like it's 2 different conversations. It's the Angels winning, and then it's the Angels with Shohei, and what does that do for the fan base?
The problem is the Angels have never really done much winning since Shohei got there. They have failed to make the postseason, and at least they've had an interesting thing about them. We talk about that all the time with teams, and the Angels, while technically Los Angeles Angels, so you can't call them a small market team, have that sort of feel where this is the only draw you've had, because Mike Trout, while he's been stellar, doesn't attract in the same way. Both of them are guys you don't largely hear a lot from, but at least with Shohei, it was such an oddity, versus Mike Trout was just good at the one thing and so good at a level that we hardly ever see.
But he stayed. Remember, he stayed too.
Yeah, but he stayed. And he seems to largely want to be left alone. I think the bigger question is here, do we need to give the Angels more credit for being one of the most dysfunctional or inept franchises in all of sports? Because I feel like they're so off to the side, we never get them the Jets credit. Like, we think about this with the Jets. Like, if you're a Jets fan, you're thrilled right now. You have a chance to do the funniest thing on earth, which is be Jets level bad with Aaron Rodgers and Dalvin Cook and the super team you've put together to remind people, oh, you think the Angels are bad for squandering 2, not 1, but 2 generational talents in their time here. We, the Jets, will bring over future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers and find a way to screw this up royally. Maybe we need to start giving the Angels more credit for being bad.
And they had Shohei and Trout from the beginning, right? I mean, the Jets had to bring in Aaron Rodgers. They had him from the beginning. I think we all thought if either one of those guys was going to be part of a World Series team, it wasn't going to be with the Angels. But again, I guess I'll always applaud a team for trying. Now, does it make the most business sense? That's why I'm not sitting in a management position, to make these decisions, because I would always want to go for it, but you have to find that fine line, just like Jared Carrabba said on this show. They should have got rid of him. Like I said, the only positive from the side of the guy writing checks is he'll have to write a smaller check for Shohei Ohtani if he wants to keep him now, because he's not going to get that $600 million deal.
Could be only like $350 is
what
Jared said yesterday.
Sneak by on that, right?
Really sad he could be only getting about $350 million.
Please lift our large adult son Shohei up in prayer as he has to deal with the Angels franchise constantly coming up underneath him. I feel like this segment's just been one big meme because his dad sits there and lauds the Angels for trying. All I can think of is the Simpsons meme dropping the cake into the garbage. Well, you tried, because that's about all the Angels are going to get.
Sorry.
We will see if any of that gives them a better chance of bringing Shohei back in free agency. But coming up next, you know it's the NBA offseason when we're starting to get workout videos. The bad man is back, and he says he's ready to go.
Everybody, you are watching GoJo and Golic. Charlotte Wilder is here, so obviously we need to talk some NBA, and Ben Simmons has given us plenty to dissect here. He told Mark Spears of his offseason, I put so much work in and I know where I'm at. Give me another month until training camp. I'm blessed to have that time. I feel I'm going to have less time, but I'm using each day as an opportunity to get better. There's no other option. People ask me, there's no other option. I have to kill. That's all I can do.
Ooh.
This dude,
oh my God,
one of the most controversial players in the NBA, just an absolute lightning rod, coming out and just being like, I'm a killer, I'm ready to go, which is absolutely not what we've seen from him in years.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to do with this other than to shake my head and shout this league, because Charlotte, as someone who covers on a basketball podcast here, Oddball, that everyone can check out as part of the DraftKings network with me and El Hassan, I feel like this is the ebb and flow of the NBA offseason, where every year we see somebody attempting to come back from their circumstances, release workout videos where they're making shots in a way they traditionally haven't. And I don't know if anyone's led the league in this more than Ben Simmons as of the last few years, Charlotte. Are you buying it this time? Is it somehow going to be different now? As he says, his back is 100% and he's ready to go.
I mean, I think I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt here. Look, I think everyone has been so hard on Ben Simmons, and I get it. You know, Philly fans were, there was for those who might not remember, everyone in Philly is like, screw you. Ben Simmons in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals in 2021, instead of going up for a dunk pass to Matisse Thybulle, and then Thybulle, he got fouled, missed two of the three free throws, and the Sixers lost. But the Sixers also blew a 25-point lead in Game 5 of that series. And then this year, Joel Embiid, the reigning MVP, I have some stats here, not to get too mathy on everybody. Embiid averaged 33.1 points per game during the regular season. In the playoffs, his point average dropped to 23.7, which is the biggest drop from regular season to postseason by an MVP in NBA history. So I think Ben Simmons was an easy guy to pin a lot of this on for Philly. And I think afterwards, after that Game 7, when Doc Rivers was like, I don't know if Ben's the guy, and Joel Embiid was throwing some shade, it felt to me like this is a very easy person to blame things on. And as Simmons says in that article, he was like, it's not like I've done nothing. Let's see here. Yeah. What did he do? He did a lot.
It's a three-time NBA All-Star, I believe, a member of the All-NBA defensive team.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like, I'm not bad. Like, why are we? And so I really hope we see that from Ben Simmons this year. I know that workout videos are an off-season joke. I know that everybody says are going to come back. I think the way he phrased it is pretty funny. Like, I have to kill. It's like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
You don't.
He also attacked himself. He basically said, I would have beaten myself last year. I would have beaten the bleep out of myself, the player I was last year with the player I am now.
Listen, I think maybe a lot of people have forgotten what he has accomplished as the #1 pick in 2016. He was Rookie of the Year. After missing a year, it was then the following year, but it was still considered a Rookie of the Year. As we mentioned, 3 All-Stars, first team All-Defensive Team, third team All-NBA. But he got hit with the tag, Mike, that you well know, that any athlete that hits with the tag when they say you're soft. And then you multiply that by playing in Philly and having that moniker.
Yeah, I was going to say, you played there a long time. You know what those people are about.
And most of my NFL career in Philly, that is a group, okay? That is a group that will get on you if you're not at least playing hard. And that was the thought process, that Ben Simmons was soft physically and mentally. And I know we're in a different place now. We're dealing with people and their mental state of where they are in sport. But that was what was said out there, right? He was weak or he was soft. And once you get that, it is difficult to come out of that one. So I give him credit right now, and I know we're in the era, and I still have to get used to the fact that everybody has to show their workout video. We don't think you're working out unless you show us. I mean, to me, the best thing you can do is play really well during the season. I don't give a damn about your off season and your workouts and you're working out at, we've seen some videos of other players working out at 3 in the morning. Who gives a damn?
Rise and grind, baby.
I don't care.
Like I say, me, Jesse, and Charlotte are children of the rise and grind era, man. I
don't care if you're playing a sport somewhere. I know you're probably working out, okay? I'm not going to look at your workout tape and go, wow, he's working out. No kidding, he's working out. But real quick, Charlotte, what I'll say is I'm happy he's recognized this, that he's busted his butt, and he has a chance to kind of change the thought process about him. I do give him credit for that. All the workout tape and all the interviews you can do and say what you want. Let's see when the season starts. Let's see what kind of player we got.
I will say, though, you basically said picks or it doesn't happen, Mike. And as someone who doesn't really work out and doesn't post her workouts, I feel like maybe you do have to post it. Maybe they have a point. I'm just saying.
I do enjoy a good Nick Chubb off-season squat video.
That's true. Yeah.
I guess the caveat should be, don't post your workouts unless you're doing something really cool.
Yeah.
If you're doing something really cool or really strong, then I'm interested.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
That's the caveat to your rule.
Yeah, you're running 22 miles on the one treadmill, or you're squatting 600-700 pounds. Cool. Show it all you want. I'm in.
Please do the freaky strong thing here.
Yeah.
But
I did like when Tyler Hero just posted the video of him hitting a bunch of threes, and everyone in Miami is like, "Oh no, we don't want Damian Lillard anymore. Let's keep this guy."
I know.
Oh, the off-season shooting videos that show up are the best, because it's either in a gym alone, where you watch any NBA player in warm-ups, you're reminded how much better they are at just shooting the basketball than the rest of us. It's the fact that you've got defenders, but in the off-season videos, if they've got defenders, it's like the guys that Zion played high school basketball against, who are all like 5'6" white guys out there, just never going to dream of even
blocking one of these.
It's like
Adam Sandler outside at a,
he can hoop, though.
He can hoop.
He can hoop.
Adam Sandler can hoop.
If Ben Simmons goes out and does it in an off-season video against Adam Sandler, big time stock up. We need help producing these videos here. But Dad, your point about why Ben Simmons got judged, and Charlotte, you mentioned the way that we treated Ben Simmons. I think a lot of that does have to do with he wasn't good in the ways that we demand you be good as a superstar player, especially in the NBA. And we've seen this even happen to an extent with LeBron.
Absolutely,
where he doesn't get the credit for being a scorer that others get because it doesn't look like Michael Jordan, the late Kobe Bryant, where you're a tough shot maker. You do it in the clutch in the ways that people deem more excellent than going down and using your physical ability. And for Ben Simmons, who also got that tag coming in as the next LeBron James ability-wise, because he was big, he was a great facilitator, he was so physical as a guard, as a guy handling the ball. When you have that as the backdrop and then you just come in and you're an elite defender, you're great at distributing the basketball, but you also maybe don't in that city play in a way that's particularly tough in their eyes. Because again, I think part of this is we also undersell how difficult it is dealing with back injuries. Like he mentioned, going back those number of years to when he originally hurt his back. Dad, you know, I mean, you've watched me, my younger brother Jake deal with back injuries. That affects everything that you do. And for all the things that Ben Simmons did so well at his size, I think we really undervalued how big an impact that has on all of
I
this.
agree with that because he caught some shade for not playing for his home country in Australia. But if he said, I was never really feeling good enough, and I would never blame a guy if he's nicked up if he can't play for his country. It's a bummer. I'm sure he'd like to, and he's talking about playing in the Olympics. But you're right, the expectation of Ben Simmons, and you don't see many NBA players who get the yips when they won't shoot a three, right? So It's just some things like, because you're right about LeBron. If there was a last shot, Kobe was taking and Michael Jordan was taking it. They're saying, I'm taking the last shot. LeBron has been saying, I'm going to find the person who can take the best shot for the last shot. It might be me and it might be somebody else. And that's foreign to a lot of people who have watched Kobe and Michael Jordan and other great shooters going back decades. But Ben Simmons, like I said, he's working. And I'm not going to think much of it till we see on the court what's going on. You can say all you want. You can put all the videos you want out. But let's see what kind of redemption tour he has.
I will say, I don't want to make this sound like we're absolving Ben Simmons of any role in all of this, because he's certainly played a part in all this. I'd imagine there might be a reason your teammates and coaches feel as comfortable dishing on you publicly as they were there in Philadelphia, even if I disagreed with that as a tact. So we'll wait and see until it becomes more than workout videos. But coming up, let's talk about someone else who said they might have some regrets about things that have transpired in the last couple of years. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic, wrapping up hour number one with our bud Charlotte Wilder. And let's talk about regret. We have the NFL's preseason wrapping up here. We talked about a number of people named starters at quarterback. That's always the hot conversation around the league. One that was pretty interesting was Sam Howell. Pretty much going wire to wire this offseason is the number one quarterback for the Washington Commanders and Ron Rivera. You've got Eric Bieniemy coming over and instituting a new offense. And This was interesting, Dad. Ron Rivera coming out as they're talking about him in the lead up to this season. And he went back to last year. Sam Howell got to start the last game of the season, I believe against the Cowboys, and went and performed pretty well after yet another tumultuous quarterback season for the Commies. And he said he was driving home talking to his wife and talked about how he regretted not letting Sam Howell go out there and play earlier, seeing what he had in this player now. Is that something that raises a red flag for you at all as far as Ron Rivera and his evaluation and handling of this position since he's been in Washington?
I was a little surprised because I have talked to coaches who have seen the quarterback start to evolve in practice, what they're putting them through in practice, and say, I see something in that guy in practice. Again, things we don't get to see, but again, coaches who I've talked to have said, yeah, that's where I saw maybe the light come on and saw what we could have. So it was a little surprising to me because you see the guy every day, right, what he's throwing, whether he's throwing show team for the other team, he's still throwing passes. And you're kind of seeing what they do in practice. So I was a little surprised at that. I will say, this preseason of non-established quarterbacks, I thought, and when I say this one name, he's the starter and was always going to be, but I wasn't established. I thought Sam Howell and Jordan Love looked the best this preseason of two guys looking to now become the starters, Charlotte, and be the guy, and just how well they played there. But yeah, overall, going back to Mike's question, I was a little surprised that Ron Rivera was surprised that, oh, maybe I should have played this guy earlier.
Yeah, I think that there might be something to do with the brand of a quarterback, though. I mean, Sam Howell played at UNC. He was great there, but then a lot of the pieces around him left. And UNC, yes, great school, but it's not what you think of when you think of like the place that quarterbacks come from, historically, at least in this era of college football that we're in. And I think that there is so much pressure in the NFL to get it right. There's so much pressure to win that I think a name like Sam Howell, you're going to really have to be sure. Like, I think Ron Rivera probably felt like this is a name that maybe not as many people who aren't diehard college football fans are familiar with, so I better be right. And maybe he waited too long. You know, maybe he played it too safe there. Also, Mike, I like the Washington Commies because it sounds like you're saying the Washington Communists, which is like so the opposite of the NFL. Just like a really
I heard that, and I was like, let's make that happen.
It's a reminder that they need to change the name back to the football team. It was an objectively better name. I'm hoping that new ownership will explore that possibility there. But yeah, I mean, Sam Howell is the 8th different quarterback to start in Ron Rivera's tenure with the Washington Commanders. And the way this franchise has mismanaged that position, Dad, Ron Rivera's job is likely going to be tied to the performance of Sam Howell now, who's a former, I believe, 5th-round pick, trying to digest a new offense here, and should have gone to him earlier. I mean, what about the Taylor Heineke and Carson Wentz experience from last year, going back to last summer, that trade to acquire Carson Wentz? Seems more and more, we talked about a lot of dysfunctional franchises today, like a move indicative of a franchise that for so long was rudderless that now, because Dan Snyder is no longer there, feels like they've got a new lease on life and has seen this quarterback play pretty well through the course of the preseason. He's going to be in an offense that I think makes use of more of the things he did under Phil Longo, who's now at Wisconsin, but was the coordinator for him at North Carolina, was the coordinator for Drake May last year as well. That's going to give him a little bit more space, allow him to make use of some of his tools, both as a runner and a passer, and maybe give them a shot this year in a Washington team that's very interesting inside a real juggernaut of a division.
Well, it's a Washington team that, let's be honest, led by their defense, right? 2 years ago on paper, this defense was one of the best in the league, and they underperformed. Last year, they started living up a little more to what they're supposed to do, and they're going to rely heavily on them, as even though Sam Howell won the job, he's got one start of experience in the NFL, so you're going to need the defense here to help out.
Yep, but I like that they're finally settled on this. Absolutely wish they'd have gone to him sooner. And with the guy you took a flyer on at that position, with the production you were getting elsewhere last year, I see no reason why you shouldn't have gone to him much earlier to try and get a look. But speaking of naming starters, while we've got Charlotte Wilder here, who while she covers basketball now has spent the last few years on the road covering college football, we finally got some news, Jessie, out of Buckeye country about who's going to be under center week 1 for them against IU.
Yeah, we had a lengthy offseason quarterback competition, but Kyle McCord has been named Ohio State's starter against Indiana on Saturday. So Buckeyes coach Ryan Day delivered the message yesterday. Here's what he had to say.
I think that's significant that we have two guys that we feel confident playing in a game. This is something that's a little uncharted territory for me, but you just go on what you see every day in practice. And I think that Kyle's consistency the last couple of weeks has allowed him to be the starter. He deserves that. But I also think Devin deserves to play in the game as well. So how much, all that's still to be determined, but we've at least come up with that conclusion here.
So not exactly like a stirring, this is our guy. He's like, yeah, they're both going to play. We'll see what happens. Doesn't feel very decided there. And this is not an easy task for Ohio State, looking to replace last season's starter C.J. Stroud, who obviously was the number 2 selection in the NFL draft. Guys, I don't know, big shoes to fill, obviously. How do we feel about this, not exactly rousing endorsement here as we name our starter?
Well, I think you can get away with that because you play Indiana, Youngstown State, Western Kentucky before Notre Dame. So Kyle gets the shot, but you get a few games to see how well he can integrate into the offense or see if you need to shift things around before you get to that Notre Dame game. They should be undefeated, obviously, before they get to that game. But considering the quarterbacks they have had in the last few go-arounds, this is a real question mark.
Yeah, this one gets interesting. And you mentioned big shoes to fill. C.J. Stroud also had big shoes to fill. Justin Fields, the starter for the 2 seasons before that, he was a part of the pandemic year in 2020, but he also threw in the. Since the pandemic, they have not had a quarterback throw for fewer than 40 touchdowns in a season. Justin Fields, 41 touchdowns in 2019. C.J. Stroud, 44 in 2021. C.J. Stroud, 41 in 2022. And Charlotte, part of that we know is when you get to go throw to guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. in this wide receiver room consistently and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave before him, it makes the job of the quarterback a whole lot easier when you've also got a competent coordinator in Ryan Day, your head coach, and those kind of weapons.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Ohio State has it pretty good when it comes to slotting someone in the quarterback position. I also think that this could be an incredible opportunity for Kyle McCord. I think that if you can come in and play really well and win that fan base over, I mean, I was at Ohio State 3 times over the past 2 years, maybe 4. And it is the most intimidating environment I have ever walked into. The Horseshoe is terrifying, to put it mildly. A lot of respect to Ohio State fans. You all are scary. And so I think that if you can, as a quarterback, if they don't go easy on their own. And if you can come in and show that at least you're improving every game and get that fan base on your side, I think it actually does give you, although I did see Michigan just really destroy them at home. But, I think that it gives you something to work with. I think if he just sort of loses the fan base from the beginning, we'll see that feels like a different story. But I think it's sort of exciting to have someone that is not a C.J. Stroud, is not a Justin Fields, and see what he can do in that pretty cushy situation.
Well, you said it right there, pretty cushy situation. The one thing about Ohio State, a team like that, you never have to say, my man, you got to do this all on your own. We don't have a lot around you. I mean, this is a team full of 4 and 5 stars. This is a team that always has a good old line, some great pass rushers on defense. They're stacked around him. So I agree with Charlotte. He's got weapons around him to ease into this thing and get his feet wet.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue probably between them and Washington, the best offensive skill groups returning in college football.
Yeah, yep.
You got Mayan Williams in the backfield, Travion Henderson there too. There's plenty of dudes. Charlotte mentioned the Michigan portion of it. It is kind of funny because Devin Brown might still get to play early in these first few games, which was the Michigan tactic last year with Cade McNamara and J.J. McCarthy as they went back and forth during the softer portion of their schedule. So probably the worst thing I could say to Ohio State fans about their tack. Charlotte, thank you so much. Everybody check out Oddball. But coming up next, stick with us here. Cris Collinsworth going to slide on in and get us ready for the NFL season. All right, very excited to welcome into the program someone who knows a lot about our...
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic, brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first order, Wrangler.com. You can use promo code GoJo15. Now, the guys, they had a chance to catch up with Cris Collinsworth yesterday, talk about the upcoming season, expectations, all that good stuff as we get ready for football. Take a look.
Current dynamic and situation here. You know him, the voice of Sunday Night Football, Cris Collinsworth, kind enough to join us now. And listen, Cris, we know Sunday Night Football, my dad's out on the road calling the radio game, so you see him every week. I want to know who's harder for you to deal with, my dad or having your son Jack out there with you with Sunday Night Football in America, bugging you on the road, I'm sure making you pay for dinner like I do.
Bit of a coin flip, but Mike has never made me hold the jet to fly home while he does the post-game show, so I got to go with Jack, yeah.
I hope your son shows you a little more respect as the elder and had been in this business a little longer than my son, who right out of the gate just started ripping me. So I hope Jack is a little more appreciative of you.
Look, running PFF, everybody in there is 12 years old. If you want somebody who knows something about technology, you're not going out and looking for 60-year-olds, right? I mean, none of us, we can barely turn on the television set. So I've got like nothing, it looks like preschool running around in PFF with all these guys, and they're high tech and they speak a language and they roll their eyes at me. And I'm used to it. I already know we are the only generation that once you got to a certain age, you were all of a sudden the dumbest guy in the room instead of the smartest guy. That's a fact. That happened.
So along those lines, what did you think of the story that Matthew Stafford's wife Kelly talked about, where Matthew's 35 years old, said he's having a hard time relating to the young players because they come in from practice or whatever and they're always on their phones, and doesn't seem to be that locker room that I know a lot of us are used to.
What was that again, Mike?
Keep going.
You know what? You know, it was funny. Kenny Anderson said the same thing kind of when I came in there. But alcohol was always the great equalizer, right? I mean, you could always, with Kenny, as long as you were going to go out and just, you didn't even have to drink, just sit beside him so he could drink. He was happy. He didn't care. But yeah, it is funny. And the one thing that I couldn't believe that I actually heard from a head coach this past year was that they have to give them phone breaks. And I was like, what? Said, we have to give them phone breaks, and they don't have to leave the room or go to the bathroom or anything like that ever. But you have to allow them to reach in their back pocket and pull out their phone and check it to make sure nothing big's going on. Then they put it away, and then they'll listen again. But if you don't give them a phone break, they can't pay attention.
My God.
I swear, I'm not kidding you. That is the truth.
That is got to be a challenge that I'd imagine most of the coaches, especially some of the older coaches around there, you know, maybe if you're Sean McVay, you also kind of need the phone break too, but I'd imagine there's some of the elder statesmen in this league. Having Mike Tomlin broached about the idea of a phone break seems like it's probably a bit of a foreign concept. Cris, maybe that'd be true for Mike McCarthy. Your guys' first Sunday night game is going to be the Giants and the Dallas Cowboys. They've also got an interesting situation, though, and I'm curious for your thought on how the Dallas Cowboys handled the acquisition of Trey Lance. They trade for the former number 3 overall pick, and we hear that they didn't approach Dak Prescott and give him a heads up on this. Do you agree with how they handled that, or do they owe their quarterback an explanation here?
Well, you know that I think Dak, I may have this wrong, but I think if nothing changes on his contract, is owed like $58 million or something next year. And of course, the word out of Dallas is this has nothing to do with the contract. And I don't think that it directly does, because there were certainly other teams in on the bidding war for Trey Lance. And why not? I mean, here's a guy that certainly would have, for any NFL team, gone in the first round this past year. And here he is now for a 4th rounder after he's come off an injury, after he's had a bit of a tough time. And actually, frankly, the 49ers found what they think is going to be their quarterback of the future in Brock Purdy. So it's an opportunity for him. I'm sure that he was really excited to get a chance to go and play for the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys in pretty good shape at the quarterback position right now, but leverage is leverage. And Jerry Jones didn't end up with the most valuable NFL franchise in NFL history because he doesn't know how to do business. Leverage is now showing up in Dallas, and it doesn't mean anything, right? He may never be an NFL player for all I know. It doesn't make any difference. But sitting there on the bench, and if they get him to drop back and throw one about 70 yards down the field, they're at least going to get Dak's attention.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it didn't, as you said, didn't cost him a whole lot anyway. How about teams like going for it? We saw what the Rams did, making enough trades to not have a draft pick for the next 50 years, but they won a Super Bowl. We saw Tampa Bay bring in Tom Brady and acquire talent and won a Super Bowl. Now we see the Jets and the move they made. Aaron Rodgers wanted to be there and all the moves around that. What's acceptable to them in the next couple of years that says this was the right move?
I think they have to win a Super Bowl. I mean, we've seen it before, right? We saw it with the Rams. We saw it with Tampa. I'm sure Denver thought they were going to see it with Russell, and who knows with Sean out there now. Maybe they get it kicked into gear here. But with all the attention that Aaron has gotten, and honestly, we did the Hall of Fame game, I don't think I've ever seen him so happy. I mean, he just, he gets grumpy with me all the time, whatever I've said something wrong or said something 20 years ago or whatever. But he was just happy. He was in a good mood. I think he was enjoying teaching. I think he was enjoying being around all the young talent. And, he didn't have to every minute look over his shoulder at the quarterback that Green Bay drafted. That I'm sure in his mind, he was thinking, if you had given me a wide receiver in the first round or a tackle or whatever the case may be, those years we were playing in the championship game, that we might have had another Super Bowl ring. And I'm sure that sticks in his craw forever. But now that he's out there and it's like he is just loved. And it's kind of for the Jets, like, what the heck? What do they have to lose, right? I mean, nobody was talking about them in that division. And now all of a sudden, it's there. And you go, okay, they had the defensive rookie of the year. They had the offensive rookie of the year. They had the number 4 ranked defense in all of football a season ago. They think they're going to be the number 1 ranked defense. They can rush the passer. They can cover on the back end. And if Aaron Rodgers just sort of gets them 24, 25 points a game, I think the Jets are going to be a lot to handle. That's a tough division, but there's a reason that people are talking about this team.
A lot of excitement around the New York Jets. There's no doubt about that. You're down in your basement film layer right now. You're grinding, getting ready for the season. I'm curious, we've talked about some of the teams involved in this conversation. Who are you most excited to see this NFL season? Who's piqued your interest coming off the offseason and preseason?
I think you start with the Jets. I do think they're the single most of the interesting teams. I think they're the most of those interesting teams. I know it's my hometown team, and I've never picked them to win anything, but I'm picking the Bengals to win the Super Bowl this year. I just am. I look at what Joe Burrow has done in his career, and I just got finished watching that quarterback show, that Peyton Manning put together. I thought that was fantastic. I just really enjoyed the heck out of that. But you look at how close the Bengals have been, and even when they got beat last year by the Kansas City Chiefs in that championship game, if they don't have that play, the late hit on Mahomes going out of bounds, they're not kicking the game-winning field goal right there. They're back at midfield somewhere. They may have hit another play with 17 seconds and done it. I don't know. But Joe Burrow has beaten Mahomes, had beaten him 3 straight going into that championship game, almost went to Kansas City and beat him again. And so now you've got an Orlando Browns coming over from his blind side to Joe Burrow's blind side now. They've got, just a tremendous group of guys at the skill position all the way across the board. I just look at this team as a team that is due, as I was saying, put a ring on the thing. I mean, Joe Burrow has done everything but put a ring on it. And when you come that far, it just kind of feels like time for me now. And I don't have anything special about it, but the other guy I really think is special guy is Lou Anarumo. their defensive coordinator, and they're going to switch out the safety position. They're going to switch out some of the young cornerbacks back there. But this is a team that I feel like is ready.
They'll feel a lot better about writing those big checks if they have a Super Bowl ring on their finger, because they got some big checks to write in the next couple of years.
I'm sure Mike Brown's getting a little
without a doubt. Chris, I'm wondering, we keep hearing, oh man, the quarterback, if he's a running quarterback, needs to run less so they don't get injured. We talk about Lamar Jackson, we talk about Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, even Lamar gets a new coordinator. So is it going to be more passing? And but the best those teams do are when the quarterback is a running threat. So how much do you buy into this team can be successful if the quarterback doesn't run like he normally runs?
Some, I think some, but I really feel like we've got the paradigm shift going in the NFL now. That all those inside and outside zone plays, and if I had Peyton Manning on my team, if I had Johnny Unitas on my team right now, I would run them at least 2 or 3 times a game out the backside of those zone runs, because if you allow that backside edge player to just crash down, he's just going to catch too many of them. And so on occasion, you have to at least represent to them that you're gonna pull that ball down. And of course, you can always RPO and do that, but that quarterback run sometimes can just be backbreaking. Now you put a guy like Lamar or Josh Allen, one of those guys back there in that position, and they go for 40. Now you don't know what to do, and you're already gaining an advantage, because with the RPO stuff, that backside linebacker, he can't move. He can't move anymore. He's got to sit right there and wait for that backside run possibility on the slant, either a run or a slant in behind him. And so they've taken one person out of pursuit to go to the front side. So now you're running on the front side, one man short over there, and all of a sudden that guy starts flowing. Either the quarterback runs or you hit a slant in behind it. There are times when, like the Philadelphia Eagles last year, would get it going. I'm like, this is not fair. This is just not fair. You cannot stop this. There are too many things, too many ways for the offense to win it. And, we all talk about Jalen and the job that he did, and deservedly so. But A.J. Brown catching those slants and running with the football last year, that was a big part of it too.
It's been amazing, like you said, to watch the paradigm around this position change as we get such an influx of incredible young talent at that spot. It's one of the many reasons we're so excited for this year, as I know you are. Chris, thank you so much. We appreciate the time today. Best of luck with the season coming up. We know it's a long grind, but we can't wait to watch you guys.
Let's go Irish. How about Sam Hartman? A forward pass. What is that?
I mean, seriously,
pass.
I'm telling you,
I
I was out there, Chris. He threw his swing pass, and people thought we invented football. It was unreal. It was amazing, but man, it was fun to watch.
Great seeing you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it, man. So, a lot of football to talk, current football here, but I thought I would give everybody a little flavor of Cris Collinsworth years ago. Cris Collinsworth went to Florida. He's a 3-time All-American wide receiver.
Sure.
But he went to Florida as a quarterback. This is when Doug Dickey was the coach, and they ran the option. And he was a quarterback when he first went to Florida, and owns and will always at least have it's a tie right now, but it will never get beat. His first pass was a 99-yard touchdown pass to Derek Gaffney. So he can only be tied. It can never be beat, and it has been tied. And after that first year, the option, they got smoked in Florida. Another coach came in, changed it to a pro style. He went out to wide receiver. The rest was history there. But went there as a quarterback and will always at least have a part of the longest TD reception in college history.
First pass as a college player, that's a tough way to start, though, because everything after that is downhill. Like, you're never going to accomplish greater than that, although I guess Chris kind of did with the whole 3-time All-American.
Did pretty well,
playing in the NFL thing there. But, Dad, I mean, he coming out, not necessarily a hot take, but the Bengals as his Super Bowl choice heading into this season. And they are interesting to consider right now relative to the other AFC elite, right? Because I think we look at that conference, and it's seen as the by far better conference between that and the NFC.
Yes.
But the upper crust there really has been them, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Buffalo Bills for the last number of years. Now, the Buffalo Bills own losses to both of them in pivotal games here. But for the Cincinnati Bengals, they had interesting comments from Zach Taylor, their head coach, about the status of Joe Burrow right now. We know he's been sitting out most of camp because of that calf injury that looked so bad, that everyone thought was going to be so bad. And basically said he's got a healthy body. The reason he's not practicing also has nothing to do with the fact that they haven't reached a long-term extension with him. He's one of the quarterbacks eligible, along with his teammate T. Higgins, who's also eligible for an extension. There's nothing to actually worry about in this situation, is there?
I don't think so. Everything you've heard from Joe Burrow, he's not going to go for that fully guaranteed deal. Now, again, maybe behind the scenes there's more going on, but it just seems like he'll be that next quarterback to fall in line. Lamar Jackson, then Justin Herbert, now to be Joe Burrow. He'll make his, $265 million or whatever it's going to be.
It's been basically a $5 million total increase from Jalen Hurts to Lamar Jackson to Justin Herbert.
And probably the rookie quarterbacks now, if they play great, by the time they come up, will probably be in the $300 million area. That's just where we are right now. We'll talk about some of the other holdouts and what they're going to get, the non-quarterbacks. But I don't worry about this. But they are going to pay him, going to have to pay T. Higgins, and then after next season is when Jamar Chase can get his extension. And they want to keep them all. So just as I said in that interview, Mike Brown is going to be writing some checks. And that's something we didn't see a lot in Cincinnati years ago. But this is a new era, and this is a team ripe right now with, as long as they keep those guys, their window of opportunity is going to be locked open for a while because they have some talent to be the top team in the AFC.
And you saw some of the moves that started to happen this offseason that are indicative of getting ready and bracing for those contracts, right? You swapped out and are going with a youth movement in your secondary on defense like Kansas City did with Jesse Bates and Von Bell both leaving in free agency. You've acquired, another pass rusher in the draft this year. So I'm with you. They've been really tight-lipped about this. I wonder if in this sort of week, in this time period here, if this is when you could see something get hammered out, you can get over the finish line because, Deb, we know you want to have the quarterback contract. When you know you got a dude, Cincinnati's got no questions. When you know you got the dude, you pay them as soon as possible. They've already let it get far past these other contracts. Could have probably gotten it done. Could have gotten it in early before these ones and saved yourself a few $1 million because the one thing we know is these contracts age remarkably well for quarterbacks. Like you said, in a few years, those numbers will go up drastically. I'm with you. I don't think it's going to affect them on the field. Joe Burrow has also missed camp time in each of his first few seasons.
Barely played in any preseason games.
This is basically his routine now. But relative to those other powers, let's talk about some of the other actual holdouts in training camp right now. Two of the best defensive players in football still not with their teams. And in his division, Chris Jones in that situation with the Kansas City Chiefs, where we saw him tweet publicly he'd be willing to miss up to week 8. To send the message, eat the fines. It would be about $7.5 million in fines he would accrue between now and then. Dad, while we know the Chiefs are built for the postseason, if you're looking for one of the biggest differences with them, Chris Jones, beyond him on that defense, there's a whole lot of nothing in the middle of that group where he had 15.5 sacks last year.
Completely agree. Now, can they still get into the postseason without him? I'm sure they can. And then if he were playing the second half of the season, the one thing you worry about, especially early on, is going to be injury. That soft tissue, a hammy, a quad, a calf, something that would knock him down a little bit. We'll wait and see on that. That would be a tough one to miss, but always better to be the first half than the second half of the season. As long as he's there by postseason, I think they'll be all right. But that one has gotten, and we don't read anything about it publicly, but certainly they have seemed to have hit a wall there in those negotiations.
You've got him there. You've got Nick Bosa out in San Francisco, which should be painfully obvious to everyone involved. You make him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, and you continue to prosper. That's one of the many things we're looking forward to hurrying up towards the season, Jesse, but there's a lot of football to look forward to.
So much to look forward to, so much coming your way on the DraftKings Network. Take a look. Can't wait. Buckle up.
Football needs to hurry the heck up.
We couldn't agree more. This is your invite to a jam-packed week of preseason shows featuring our brightest football minds.
We really need to talk about this.
Yeah, I'm down to do that.
Join us for our Hurry Up House Party. Tune in and ball out as our hosts drop fantasy, betting, and fan need-to-knows. That way, you'll be more than ready at our live Thursday kickoff show from Kansas City. Watch all the shows on Samsung TV Plus or listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Starts Thursday, August 31st on DraftKings Network.
All right, September 29th to October 1st, the Ryder Cup going down right outside Rome, and Ryder Cup captains' picks were announced. Zach Johnson has spoken. He was not afraid to stir up some emotion. The Action Network's Jason Sobel will join the program next.
I think collectively, when I came on my visit, I think I.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Let's talk Ryder Cup captains picks. As you can see on this list, Brooks Koepka, Ricky Fowler, Jordan Spieth, Colin Morikawa, Sam Burns, and Justin Thomas. A couple of these names definitely going to stir up some controversy here. Guys, Koepka being picked despite leaving the PGA Tour for LIV, and Thomas not playing well enough to reach the PGA Tour's FedEx Cup playoffs, but many would say he's this era's emotional leader, if you will. So what do we think? We got a guest to help us break this down.
Yep, the Action Network's very own Jason Sobel joins us now here. And Jason, it seems to really be that, right? All the focus was on maybe the LIV and PGA divide here, but is it fair to say Justin Thomas is going to be the most controversial captain's pick of this round of the Ryder Cup?
Yeah, from all the people who have been yelling at me on Twitter over the last 24 hours, I can safely say that the Justin Thomas pick is by far the most polarizing in a day that's been the most polarizing day in golf that we see every other year. I mean, there's not another day. There are more interesting days. There are more fun days. There's not a more polarizing day in the game of golf than the day that the Ryder Cup captains picks are announced. We've that number from back in the day, they didn't have any to 2 to 4, and now it's 6 because they just need to leave themselves open to more interpretation. And look, Jessie said it right there. Justin Thomas did not make the FedEx Cup playoffs, missed the cut in 3 of the 4 major championships, finished 65th in the other one, did not play his best golf this year, and yet he's been very good at the Ryder Cup. He's a natural partner for Jordan Spieth. There are some very big pros, some very, very big cons on both sides of the list, and quite honestly, it's a great sports debate right now. Like any great sports debate, we don't have an answer yet, and so you're not right and you're not wrong, no matter which side of the fence you're on.
Keegan Bradley's quote about the selection process, he says, "I've always been an outsider in the sport, but I've tried to get closer to the guys I thought would be on the team. I feel like moving forward, I'm going to have to automatically qualify to make the team. Is he right?
He might be, Golic. I chafe at the notion of this being some sort of old boys club that everyone's selecting their friends and they're going on a buddies trip to Italy. Quite frankly, you get one shot at being the captain. Zach Johnson has never done this before. Zach Johnson is not saying, hey, I just want to bring my friends and have a good time in Rome, and who cares about those other guys? Zach Johnson's trying to bring the best team he can to go win. I thought Keegan Bradley would make for a great selection. He would have been on my team. I would have had 5 of the same players as Zach Johnson. I would have taken Keegan Bradley over Sam Burns, but it's nitpicking there. I don't know that you necessarily have to be part of the quote-unquote in-crowd. I'm not sure there is an in-crowd. You know where Keegan Bradley lives? Lives in South Florida, right down the street from Justin Thomas and Ricky Fowler and just about everybody else who was named to this team. So I think you play your best golf and you get on the team. I don't like the notion of some of these players didn't earn it, didn't deserve it. Guess what? None of these 6 players, none of those names you see on the screen right now deserve to be on the team or earned their way onto the team. The top 6 qualified, they earned it. These guys are trying to go out there. These are these 6 players that the captain and his assistants deemed the players best suited to help the U.S. team win. And by the way, guys, first time, it would be the first time in 30 years for the U.S. team to win on European soil. That's happened in 3 decades, going back to 1993. I know. I get it. If the U.S. doesn't win next month, a lot of fans are going to say it's Zach Johnson's fault, bad captain's picks, should have had Keegan, should have had Cameron Young, should have had Tony Finau, Russell Henley, whoever it might have been. And yet, I don't know that there's anything better they could have done. I mean, we'll see what happens, but this is a 30-year drought for the U.S. going over there.
And part of that also in joining that cause is Brooks Koepka, a name you mentioned there, who is this indicative of the melting away of the LIV PGA divide that we saw kind of ravage the tour for so long in the wake of this merger?
I can tell you that nobody less wanted a LIV player on this team than Zach Johnson. Zach Johnson is a PGA Tour loyalist, but Brooks Koepka quite honestly forced his hand. Brooks Koepka finished 2nd at the Masters, won the PGA Championship, which of course is run by the PGA of America, who also runs the American side of the Ryder Cup. I think it was a no-brainer. He nearly qualified on points after only playing 4 events that had qualification points this year. So that speaks volumes about Brooks Koepka. And as far as any sort of animosity in the team room between the 11 PGA Tour players and the 1 LIV player, once again, they all live in South Florida. They all practice together. They all know Brooks pretty well. And Brooks has not been one of those guys who has been, sort of, hey, LIV is great, and I hate the PGA Tour. He's been very much, even though he's playing LIV, sort of quiet about the whole dissension between the 2 tours. So I don't think it necessarily says anything big, but it does say that, hey, Brooks Koepka is good enough to be on this team because, like I said, Zach Johnson would have loved to bring 12 PGA Tour players to this. Brooks Koepka forced his hand.
Jason, as far as the Ryder Cup overall, we have our team, and looking at what the European team may look like, where do you see us? Where do you see how we could finish? Do we have a good shot to win this thing?
Of course we have a shot to win this thing. I am surprised that the U.S. team is still favored, and favored by as much as they are right now. At DraftKings, I believe they're minus 130, minus 135 to win, even with a draw thrown in there. The European team will announce their 6 final captains picks next week. I think if Luke Donald goes with the top-heavy strategy, the front-loading strategy, using his superstars for all 5 matches, which means Rory McIlroy, Jon Rahm, Victor Hovland, who's been playing unbelievable golf recently, Tommy Fleetwood, Tyrrell Hatton, maybe Matt Fitzpatrick, Shane Lowry. He's got some superstars on that team, might not have the depth of the U.S. side, but if those guys all go out and play at least 4, maybe 5 matches, which I would assume that they do, I think Europe is going to be very tough to beat on their home soil in Italy just a month from now.
Like you mentioned, up against a 30-year drought away from U.S. soil for the U.S. team. Going to be very exciting. It's one of the most enjoyable events in golf. Like you said, it elicits a lot of emotion, which we love, and we can't wait to see more of at the end of September. Jason, thanks so much. We appreciate all the help, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jace.
Dad, the other portion of this, and you mentioned the European team here.
Yeah.
Victor Hovland, who is the face of this right now, had himself a season right now. This man laughing all the way to the bank, shot by shot.
It's amazing. After the last two tournaments where he won the FedEx, the last two tournaments, he won over $21 million. Over $34 million he won. We have it broken down shot by shot on what he made per tournament, per shot. I believe it came down to, for his season, he made over $5,000 per golf shot.
He did. If you break it down, and we've got the graphic on screen right here, over $1.4 million per event, $19,000 a hole. Dad, I mean, that's the one to me that sticks out, because most golfers, when you go out and play around, you're betting with your friends, you're betting however much you want a hole, $5, $10, $20 a hole. We've obviously got some friends with a little richer taste who will pay more than that. $19,000 a hole as the bet that he is winning every single time based on how well he's played is absolutely insane.
It's just stunning when you break it. You see that the total winnings, it's cool. It won a ton of money, especially in the last 2 weeks. But when you break it down like that, you know who's got to be really happy is Caddy. Caddies normally get at least 10%. Good life. And then who knows what kind of bonuses go in there. But 34 mil, that's 3.4 mil with my quick math that he's getting right off the top of 10%. But then you think about it, $5,000 a shot, $19,000 a hole. The way I was golfing over in Ireland, I should owe them money every shot, the way I was hitting it. I mean, it's incredible the money they made.
Yeah, all those numbers would just be in the red with the fun minus in front to remind you that you were in fact sad and bad at golf. Like
I just wanted to leave the balls. They had it with our Golic Family Foundation on the ball, so I figured I'd lose some out there. Maybe somebody would find it, make a donation.
So you were just doing it for charity.
That's exactly right.
Oh my God, you were being charitable.
Yeah, it's the kind of guy I am.
For your service.
I didn't naturally have that slice of that hook or hit it onto a beach or into the rough. I didn't do that on purpose.
No, totally. Of
for
course
charity.
Not. I stink.
For the kids. Kids.
It's okay.
Oh my God. Well, I could say looking forward to the Ryder Cup. And we mentioned the Justin Thomas portion of things.
Yeah.
I do think you have to factor in the overall team morale. He's a glue guy. He's a guy that, like you said, has a natural partner, has thrived in this stage. And it's not just about the overall year performance. It's, hey, what do you do when we're in this setting here? How do you respond to this specific format? I think that's important. It's going to be fascinating to watch. But coming up next, let's hear from one of the most important voices in college basketball on the changes that we've seen in the transfer portal next.
All right, guys, we still have plenty of GoJo and Golic to get to this morning, but coming up at 10 a.m. on DK Network, catch up on the latest episode of Anik and Florian. They've got everything you need to know, all the hot gossip going down in UFC. But guys, John Calipari, he had some choice words for the transfer portal. Let's take a listen. Yeah, so as you can see, it is one and done too. Everybody was mad about a young player coming in and only staying 1 year. Well, now we're doing it with older players. It's the same as one and done. Guys, is this a little ironic here? Is this big? Are we being big-brained?
I feel like I'm being gaslit right now. And like, I've always enjoyed getting to interact with Cal, and he's great in front of a microphone. I saw him all day on ESPN yesterday. That guy knows, kind of like we talk about with Nick Saban, Dad. When John Calipari gets in front of a microphone, he knows exactly the point he wants to make and who he wants to make it to, and the weight that his voice tends to carry. But for a guy who has quite literally been the poster of one and done in the modern era of college basketball, it seems weird that he would war against anything in the system like this.
And also some of the other comments about, four seasons to play in 5 years, that's where we are now. Again, we kind of have to carve out the pandemic, right? Where we still have another couple of years of players who got that extra year. I mean, when we're calling college football games, it was like who are the super seniors, the names that were going around.
Shout out Sam Hartman.
So once we're going to get, at some point in the next couple of years, we're going to get back to the norm, which is you basically get 5 years to play four seasons, right? Whether it's injury, sometimes you get a sixth if an injury, a hardship. So we're already doing that. And then for the portal he talked about, basically one free shot, right? You get to transfer and play right away once. Other than that, you have to sit. Well, that's basically a rule right now anyway that the NCAA just hasn't been enforcing, but they're starting to now.
Yeah, so the rule had been, since they made that change, hey, you get a one-time free transfer without penalty unless you're a graduate. Once you've graduated, you fulfilled your obligation to the university, then as a graduate transfer, you can transfer to anywhere
and play
that doesn't have a graduate program offered at your school. But you're right, we have seen guys be able to use the hardship waivers. Basically, they're moving back home because they've got to be close to a relative. Something about their situation is deemed this necessary. And in college football right now, this preseason has been full of players awaiting the results on that because you're right, the NCAA has started to push back on what had seemingly been guys being able to transfer almost at will multiple times in their college career here, which, Dad, I've never had a problem with. John Calipari brought up the stat about the number of players who wound up going into the portal and then walking out without scholarships. Now, according to NCAA data, of the 1,385 D1 men's basketball players on scholarship who entered the portal last year, 262 of them were left without a scholarship in the new school. Cal also talked about the effects of coaches holding scholarships for players that might potentially shake loose, and that costing high school players. Basically, he's saying, hey, this is having a negative effect on the coaches because we've got to deal with all this, and a negative effect on players. Dad, to me, all of that reeks of a new system that we're still learning about here.
That's exactly right.
And my thought has always been, and the smart people that I've heard talking about the portal in college football and in basketball have said, I think you need enough time to reach equilibrium. Because eventually, you know who's going to realize, hey, sometimes looking without or leaping without looking may not be beneficial to me, is going to be the players. When you see a guy you played AAU with, a guy you played high school with, a guy who was on your team leap into the portal because they think of better opportunities out there, and all of a sudden find that, oh, now I've got to drop down to the FCS level and play football potentially. Now I'm thinking about other options and opportunities. Those cautionary tales might prompt players with more information on this process to then make different decisions going forward. I won't say better or worse, I'll say different.
Listen, not every player is making the right decision, but it's their choice at least to make the decision. And that's what I'm happy about. And listen, some are getting bad advice. Some are, as you mentioned, are transferring in the basketball world and not having scholarships. Some in football try to transfer too much, transfer 2 or 3 times, and never get the outcome they want. But they have the choice. And sometimes it can be a bad choice, and that's okay. So for every coach complaining about what's going on, what I say about it is deal with it. It's not going anywhere. Now, could we have better guidelines, okay, for NIL? Are we going to get some guardrails, and who's going to make those guardrails? Nope. We said it is a one-time transfer and you play right away. After that, you're supposed to sit. But players have been getting away with it, and now the NCAA is starting to crack back down. Give us the guidelines. What are we doing? Don't move the goalposts on us, okay? let's try and figure out some rules, which has been difficult for the NCAA because they're too worried about if a coach buys a burger for somebody, to suspend them. So you wonder where their focus is at times. But these things are here. Yes, is it tougher on coaches? Yes, tough. Get over it. Deal with it. Just like in baseball, you have a pitch clock now. Everybody complained about it. In a year or two, it's going to be the norm. We just had, I think it was last week, the first day where there were almost 5,000 pitches on a full slate a day of games, and there was no pitch clock violations. Pitchers and batters, get used to it. You'll get used to the system in college. It's a little more chaotic, but you'll get used to it because it's not going back.
No, and we've already seen, right, this evolve through the first couple of years. Now, in all sports, you've got windows where players can enter the transfer portal. Before, it used to be any time. You were always worried about a player being able to leave. Now, you've got defined areas, you've got defined time periods for these coaching staffs. I do think there are things around the rules of college football we can do to help coaches out going forward more, right? Some of the things about the recruiting calendar and schedule for them.
Right.
Wholly unsustainable. You are going to burn these guys out. And on that end, I do feel for them. They are getting used to a new normal right here. And maybe there are some older coaches in the sport who have gotten to do one thing one way for a long time who might decide it's not worth their effort anymore. Would totally understand that. There is going to be a young crop of coaches who would happily accept that responsibility, those challenges, with the price tag that comes along with it right now. Because no one was worried about how often you jump when Willie Taggart jumped through 3 schools in 3 years,
right,
going from Oregon to Florida State and all that stuff in there. Coaches have been allowed to go and make those mistakes potentially, but also seek those opportunities. Cal underscored the real game here. 5 years to do 4 years of eligibility. That's all you've got.
Right.
That's why I'll continue to pound the drums and say, we've got to find ways to make this something with maybe a little bit more structure to help everyone be able to make these decisions in a calendar they can stick with, while also still understanding these young people have 4 years of college eligibility to try and either make themselves marketable enough to now achieve NIL in college, make themselves ready enough to go and reap that benefit when they go professional in whatever their sport is, or just enjoy playing the sport they've played their entire life that's helping pay for their education right now.
I have no problem with a player that is looking to get some more to get on tape to make it to the NFL. 2% of the players out of college make it to the NFL. 98% think they're going to make it to the NFL. And that's okay. That's okay to think you can be there and try and set yourself up in a position to get a good look and have the chance. And then whether you make it or not, you'll see. School is there. You have the ability to go to your classes and get your education. And now, because of the added responsibilities, we're starting to see schools hire people for specifically, all the players that are going to come available in the portal and be able to just handle that instead of one of the assistant coaches also handles the recruiting. A lot of time, maybe it's a special team coach, also the recruiting coordinator for high school, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Now you have thousands more in the portal, so you need more help there. You need others to a job established to handle that. So it's like it's adapt or die, right? This is the new normal. Adapt to it and figure out a way to work it to your advantage.
And it is funny to think about the different effects it's going to have in different places, right? Because so many people looked and said, well, it's going to turn smaller schools into feeding programs for these larger schools. There's the other way, and we've seen this happen with a lot in quarterbacks in college football, and I'd be curious for a guy like Cal, who's done such a great job recruiting one-and-done level talent, high-level guys coming out of high school, who maybe now get to Kentucky and aren't necessarily liking their role. And like we see in college football, hey, you got a room full of quarterbacks, only one guy gets to play. And so if you're the guys in the back there, we see guys shoot out and all of a sudden can help affect other programs. You're seeing people able to go say, well, I might not have had a chance at this guy coming out of high school, but now all of a sudden he gets to the school that he originally wanted to go to, and maybe the same opportunities now there. And so now you get teams further down the food chain that are the beneficiaries of this. I don't know what it's going to look like in college basketball. Cal's going to feel this in a different way than a lot of other coaches, but we've seen in football, plenty of programs around the country have benefited from quarterbacks being able to shoot out, from the Georgias and Ohio States of the world that naturally have brought in so much talent at those positions that used to have to sit and wait their turn, now gets to go and affect the outcome of college football in a lot of different ways going forward. So we'll wait and see. Another year of data coming up in that world. But let's talk fashion on the way out here. Coming up next, LeBron James on and off the court, setting the tempo. The rest of us will follow. All right, let's finish up GoJo and Golic the way that we always have. The stat and the third, 3 quick stories to finish off your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out on the DraftKings YouTube channel live, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. But you can also get us DraftKingsNetwork.com, Samsung TV Plus, and of course, both hours podcasted wherever you get your podcasts. So let's get to these stories, Dad and Jessie. And let's start off with a pretty cool notion here, especially I know big around these parts in Boston. There's a new women's professional hockey league that is launching right now. The PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League, announced 6 teams in Boston, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the New York City area, which could also include Connecticut, New Jersey, Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto. The details on the home arenas, team names, and logos are still coming together, but this is coming in the wake of there had been 2 competing women's professional leagues. We had 1 dissolve, and so now we've got 1 league here, which is great for the NHL, who's sort of a consultant partner in all this, but who certainly wants to help, didn't want to get in between the 2-league divide before, but now I think is going to be a much bigger part of this, as we'll see. The PWHL also represented at events like NHL All-Star Weekend, and a lot of things to help grow a game that a lot of people love.
Trying to follow that WNBA, NBA model.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Now that there's just the 1 league and they don't have to choose between a couple of leagues there. So 3 teams in the U.S., 3 teams in Canada, 24-game schedule. But that is the most important element of it, because we've seen other leagues come and go, is if the NHL gets involved, right? That's what we keep waiting for in football. We have USFL, we've had XFL, we've had different iterations of those over the years, and none have stuck to be kind of that those teams for the NFL, and we still wonder if that's going to happen. We see it obviously with the WNBA and how they have flourished now over the years. So let's see if that can happen in women's hockey, to be associated and the NHL associating with them.
And this is all privately funded. And they said to that point, Dad, because we talk about when leagues start up, you're not usually going to be profitable right away. And they said they've walked into this with a 10-year plan. They have an understanding, hey, we might not make as much money early on this, but we've got a vision for how we want this to go. They're going to get ready, I believe, to name the 6 GMs of the franchises here coming up soon, and then begin the process of player acquisition and all the things as they flesh this out. But a great start, and great to see it dealt with, one, that level of sincerity, financial interest, but also an eye towards the future, that this isn't just about starting a league for this year or next year, but trying to make this viable for women in this sport for the next decade plus.
But I'll quickly say it all depends on how much you're willing to lose, because we heard the same thing with the USFLs and the XFLs when they tried it. It's like, we know we're going to lose money, and then all of a sudden they're gone because they're losing that money, or losing more than they thought they were going to lose. So I don't know what kind of war chest they have. We keep talking about that with Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, in the XFL. They're losing money. How much are you willing to lose before you move on? So it's going to be the same thing with this new league as well.
It's Dodgers co-owner Mark Walter and his wife.
Yes.
So they've fully funded this venture. And the PWHL said that they received interest from independent potential owners, for each team. They're deciding to keep it all under one umbrella for this inaugural season. But it sounds like the war chests are pretty deep, but time will tell.
Yeah, and we've seen, Dad mentioned the WNBA. I think we've seen a lot of renewed interest now. The TV numbers have long since been there for a lot of different women's sports, but the financial opportunity and the growth opportunity it presents, I think, is piquing the interest of a lot of people. And so hopefully we'll continue to see success there. Let's get to that, though, an area we have already seen plenty of success.
Yeah.
The Nebraska women's volleyball team.
Look at this photo.
Yeah.
Just look at how insane that looks. That is Memorial Stadium. So, guys, that's actually going down today. 2 outdoor women's volleyball matches, first of their kind. Like you said, it's being held at the epicenter of college volleyball, Lincoln, Nebraska. Yeah, volleyball day in Nebraska. And, guys, this is expected to be huge. I mean, the numbers on this, I think I saw 91,000 people are expected.
Which would break the world for the most attended women's sporting event in the world. That current record was set at a 2022 UEFA Women's Champions League match in Barcelona with 91,648. But, Dad, these are 5-time national championship Cornhuskers who saw Wisconsin actually originally did this at the Kohl Center up there, drew a huge crowd of a little over 16,000. And so Nebraska said, anything you can do, we can do many magnitudes of order better than that at a place that is deeply passionate about their women's volleyball.
I don't think there's any doubt they'll set this record. They'll have all kind of entertainment around it. as well. I love when they put other sports in the stadiums like they do with hockey in the NHL.
Yeah.
I think that is so cool. But I'm going to tell you the one thing that through Nebraska is trying to say how big this is. And that is the chancellor of Nebraska is trying to get it okayed to sell beer at these volleyball matches. They're not even allowed to sell beer at the football games. They're in that stadium.
Which, quite frankly, as of late, they haven't earned.
That's very true. He wants there to be beer sold at the volleyball games. That's when you know it's a big deal.
That's big time stuff right now. The chancellor also canceled school today at Nebraska for this.
Virtual classes. They got a Scotty McCreery concert.
That's my kind of chancellor right there.
Yeah. He's like going all in.
I'm not like other chancellors. I'm a cool chancellor.
Because you know if they had school, there'd be that one teacher that gave a quiz.
Oh, yeah.
There's always that one.
You are not dismissed. The bell is ringing. You are not dismissed.
Oh, God. There's got to be some hater teachers on that campus.
Without a doubt.
Because there's always the couple that don't want to go along with the whole athletic thing.
Sports.
They're going to have class anyway. They're going to be like, you got to come into class and sign in.
Exactly. Sign the whole sign-in thing. Yeah. Amen.
I got a better idea. I'm going to go booze and watch volleyball. Hell yeah, brother.
Sign me up.
All right. Congratulations in advance to Nebraska, and I'm sure shattering that record.
Yep.
Yeah.
But, Jesse, let's finish off the day with some fashion.
It's called
courtesy of
Fashion
LeBron James.
Sweetie. It's called Fashion Sweetie. LeBron James, just look at the video. Can we just bring up the video? Because you'll understand what we're talking about when we say Fashion Sweetie.
So definitely just chilling in the kitchen, minding my own business. And
I'm getting ready for bed.
This comes walking around.
I'm getting ready for bed. I don't know what y'all on, but this is my night.
Look like you about to bounce up out of here.
I'm gonna bounce my ass in that bed. Look at this fit. Look at this fit. That fit is garbage. Well, I got some nerves saying it is garbage right now.
We talked about the generational divide before with Cris Collinsworth about how you said you guys are the only generation that gets dumber as you get older, according to the younger generation coming. Got to be weird for LeBron because he's seen as a mogul. He's seen as an icon. He's seen as cool by the rest of the world, probably getting roasted in his own house every day by Bronny Bryce and his other guys.
And that's not a onesie either, right?
It's not a onesie. It's a matching top and bottom.
Right. Okay.
And anyone just listening on the podcast, it's just basketballs all over it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Guy lives, eats, breathes, and apparently sleeps basketball.
He said that's what he was going to sleep in. I mean,
Yeah. He
how
said, "These are
hot
my
are
night
you going to be
clothes."
in that outfit?
Yeah.
Well, I think night clothes is just what he's
on.
wearing before bed. I can't imagine he is wearing that full sweatsuit.
I mean, that would be an absolutely psychotic move to go to sleep.
That would be
in
crazy, right? Don't we all sleep nude? I mean, isn't that the way we go?
I mean, basically.
Isn't that what we? Isn't that?
Yeah, I
the
think
norm?
I think that's definitely most men do.
Yeah. I mean,
I've been
Jesus
chastised
Christ,
to never even think about that in my household.
yeah, I was going to say, like, it's not even a funny joke. I know my mom wouldn't let that fly. You guys sleep with 3 dogs in your bed, and you stay far away on the other side.
Dogs are in the bed. Hank, Harry, the 2 pugs, and Ted, the bulldog, all in the bed.
Where, like, in between you guys?
In between us,
Okay.
yes.
They're not
And
even at the foot. They're
no, some start there. They move around. It's a whole.
It's
thing.
amazing.
We love it though. They're great dogs.
If you roll over at all, because I was house sitting for you guys, so I got to sleep with the dogs. And if you roll over at all, I was taking up maybe 1/10 of the bed by the end of the night.
Yeah.
They just absorb the space and they try and shove you off. It is their bed, and I was just taking up residency.
But you have 2 pugs, so there's room in there. But then you have a bulldog, and every night the bulldog looks up and says, "Wait a minute. These 2 little flat facers get to be on the bed and I don't. So how are you going to say no?"
You have to say yes, but then it's Pandora's box. Then you got 3 dogs in the bed, taking up the whole space.
And they all snore. Oh my God, do they snore?
No.
Yeah,
It's
so does my
unbelievable.
wife. Well, no, she doesn't. She doesn't snore.
That's the dogs. It's
That's
the dogs.
Just the dogs.
It's the dogs. It's definitely the dogs.
I'm sorry.
I
said
do,
that out loud.
Jesse, I'm glad you pointed out, though, the biggest issue with this stolen onesie valor. As someone who's often rocked a onesie, and I found out the other day, Tipsy L's where I bought it was a Shark Tank company. Had no idea.
Oh.
I got a great Christmas onesie from them that I proudly bust out at holiday parties.
Yes.
But like women who wear rompers or men who wear the romp hymns, you got to deal with the fact that if you're wearing a true onesie, you got to basically get butt naked to pee. LeBron's stolen valor. He just gets to drop the pants.
That's exactly
Yeah, that
right.
is not a onesie.
No,
okay?
it's not.
Let's just put that out there.
Not a onesie.
Either live it with the rest of us or kindly get out. Except for you guys, if you're here, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us a 5-star rating, and come back and join us tomorrow. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you then.